And you found us. Hi, everyone. You know, whenever things change, you know, it's just, there's new procedures with software. I'm still learning how to do the new software that they put out for this platform, and so it's not quite, the dance steps. I'm still stepping on toes and things like that. Anyway, welcome. You found us. I'm here. I say I'm going to be live 2 p.m. Pacific live. Yesterday I was on tape because we did a show at the Marsh in San Francisco live, and it was a great show. I mean, this is a tough time for me because my mother-in-law fell last week, and it was really kind of tough to see if she would get by. And I had to go on last night, even though I found out that she had passed. And so I had to really figure out what would be the best thing. I mean, I didn't want to be disrespectful, but I thought maybe it would be kind of an example, a service of sorts, to show how in trying times like these last few days, we can find our way out. And so, of course, this is compounding all the other depressive kind of things in our lives. Certainly, if you voted a certain way, it's a kind of gloomy time. And the show I did last night actually was about the kind of gloom that we're facing. And I had to consult the guy who I call my guru guy, consult his readings and his thoughts. And if you talk to a meditative type of person, they'll tell you their thoughts on life and death. And life is energy. A life force is energy, and you can't kill energy. Now, your body is another thing. And people, they either they take care of themselves or they don't. But the body has an expiry date, right? Energy doesn't. Energy lives on. And so with that in mind, I thought, yeah, Grandma, she's not gone. Her spirit is still there. And I went back and looked at old pictures of her, and she was still there. And I imagined her with me on stage or there in the theater, small little theater, the Marsh in San Francisco. And I had to go on. And then, of course, my wife is in her hometown she was with her mom and family. I stayed back to take care of the dogs because I wasn't sure if I was going to go out there. And then when it was clear that she wasn't going to make it, well, her decision based on her living will was not to have a service, not to do anything special. And so there was no reason to go back there except to celebrate her life, celebrate her. And I did, I think, in my show, because, like I said, Grandma energy is still there. Grandma was such a creative force. She was just so alive even at 91. She was 91. She drove, still was driving. Although maybe she could have curtailed that a bit, but no, she was still driving. And she was active in her crafts groups. She could take a piece of wood and she could find the bird. And she was a wood carver. Magnificent wood carver. She was an artist, creative. She could play music, she could sing, she could watercolor, and she would paint things and send them. She would do a watercolor on a greeting card and send it. And the last one was a Hallmark card, but it had the typical grandma touches. I mean, of course, favorite son-in-law and all that. But I'll never forget her. And I honored her by doing the performance last night, where I just mentioned all the great things that Grandma did. And one of the things that Grandma did was she said publicly she wasn't going to say she wasn't sure who she was going to vote for. And she was going to tell us after the election. And then she didn't tell us because she fell and got hurt. And then, I mean, I just knew when I heard that she had fallen, I knew that was the beginning, the end. You know, that's the thing about people who fall at a certain age. It's not the fall that kills them, but it's like the things they have to do to get you back to normal that makes the odds pretty low that you can recover. Turns out she didn't break a hip. She broke another bone, but Grandma couldn't recover. So I honored her last night. She didn't have a service. She's not going to have a service. I honored her by mentioning her in my show, my Amok Monologue 69, which is a show that I'm going to take around the country. And I found out today I'm going to take to Canada next year. So happy about that. I've been to Canada, been to Vancouver. That's about it. I guess I've crossed. In Detroit, you can cross the river and get into Canada. I didn't cross that time I was in Detroit. But I'm going to be in Canada. Looking forward to being in Edmonton. Looking forward to being in Winnipeg. Doing the Fringe. And my friends tell me that those are the places to do the Fringe. You don't want to do the Fringe in Toronto or Montreal. There's too much to do. Too many people. And the Fringe excels. The Fringe is the fringiest in Toronto, in Winnipeg and Edmonton. I think the biggest Fringe in the world is in one of those two. That's why I chose them. So I got in. So I look forward to doing that. My show that I kind of workshopped last night at the Marsh in San Francisco. If you missed it, well, maybe I'll do more at the Marsh. I love the Marsh. Not necessarily for an extended run. I mean, I could do that, but just as a place to work out. It's kind of like my Planet Fitness for solo shows. And so I really regard it as my place. And I know I was really kind of on edge before the show because I was thinking about my mother-in-law. And I was waiting to be let into the theater. And normally I would just fret and be anxious. But there was a kind of calm that, oh, yeah, the show, I know my show. There's these other things I have to be concerned with, like what's happening back, where the family is and how are they doing. And then once I heard, there was a kind of serenity. And I just knew what I had to do to honor her. Maybe the thing about Grandma is she left so many things, little, bits of her art. But the thing that I always hold dear are her quilts. I mean, she was a quilter. And quilters, they're gatherers. They create these works of art that encompass life, people, things. They put them together and they provide warmth. And I think more than anything, that's what I felt last night. Grandma's warmth. It was undeniable. And may she rest in peace. This is my mother-in-law. I'm talking about my mother-in-law. She was a force. And darn it, she knew everything. You would ask her something, and it was like helpful hints from Heloise. She would know the answer. Oh yeah, do that. This is how you do that. She lived through the Depression. She just knew everything, and she knew how to stretch a penny. I could say she could stretch $1, but boy, she was fine grained. She could stretch a penny. And we took her on a number of trips. We had a great time in Hawaii one time. And boy, does she insist that Talisker Scotch is the best single malt. I don't know. I had right now the trendy one is Lagavulin. But she was a big Taliskers fan, and I remember one time I was in Hawaii with her, and we had to have a Taliskers drink off. And this is odd for me to talk about now because I hardly drink at all now. But, oh, Grandma, I'm going to miss her. My favorite story, though, really the favorite story. We're sitting outside in the backyard, and we're going through, all the song services, and they're deep, right? Any song you want, going back in time. And she said, how about Cowboy Bob Copass? Now, I know most of you don't know who Cowboy Bob Copass is. But if you grew up in the Midwest around, Kentucky, Ohio, you're part of that migration from Europe, and they came and they were hardscrabble America. And you recount the songs you heard on the radio. Cowboy Bob Copass. And there we were. Lyrics and all. I think we're on some kind of music, Amazon Music or something. Singing Cowboy Bob Copass. Grandma. That's Grandma. So, tough day, but it helped me in my performance yesterday. And, the thing about when you do solo work, and this came up in the question and answer period after they asked all the artists, how do you write? How do you do? What is your process? And artists always love to talk about process. But someone said, oh yeah, I write it down, I memorize, and I perform it. And I said, for the first time, I really felt comfortable just going in there knowing that I knew what I was going to say. I'd mastered it enough so that if you push a button, I'm ready to say it, and whatever comes out is unique to that time, to that audience. It is a once-in-a-lifetime experience. And somehow I saw that as being more worthy than, here are the words, I'm memorizing it. I'm saying them in exactly the same way, exactly, the right perfect way each time I do it. And my God, isn't that great? And I thought to myself, when I heard another fellow artist say that, I said, no, it should be more alive. It should be a unique expression and a unique performance that day, that that audience, a once in a lifetime moment. And my teachers in the past, I've gone back and forth from teachers who said, you got to memorize, you got to put it out there, it's got to be perfect, and other teachers who said, well, you know what you got to say, and it comes out. Let your subconscious be your guide. And I used to be more here's the words, here's the script, do it perfectly each time. But now the subconscious guys have gotten to me. And now I believe that that's the way. And that's why a solo performance is live and different each time. And it may not be the best, but we're not going for perfection. We're going for real. We're going for authentic. Different audience, different time, different me, different time. Material the same, but each time real and authentic. So anyway, a good time was had by me and the audience that was there at the Marsh. Great Monday Night Marsh, great little program, great little thing they do at the Marsh, and hope to be back. And I hope to develop these shows further that I did on November 4th and November 18th. Before I'm going to Fresno at the Rogue Festival next year, also to Canada. So I'm going to at least 4 Fringes next year. Maybe Orlando again. So, and the World Series of Comedy. Hope to do that a couple of times. Anyway, welcome to this program. This is Emil Amok's Takeout. It's kind of like a radio show. In fact, if you're watching intently, looking at me or on your screen, because you can watch it on YouTube, I'm going to put this on Patreon. And also I'll put my performance. If you missed my performance or saw it live streamed, I'm going to put it on Patreon, and you can join it. Probably later this week I'll put it on there. But this is kind of like the radio monologue, where I stand here and I talk to you, kind of structured after Gene Shepard, New York City monologist. And you can watch him on YouTube tapes. So I talk about my life. I talk about my Asian American life, my Asian American Filipino life. We subtitle this WDAAAT, What Does an Asian American Think? And there's a lot to talk about now. Boy, these deportations. And I'm thinking, it doesn't matter what race you are, because there are immigrants from all over, Africa, Asia, Latin America. They're black, they're brown, they're Asian. And everyone, except maybe the whites get a pass at this. Maybe you don't look at a white person and say, oh, Russian immigrant. You just think, oh, white person. But certainly you look at a Filipino guy, or you look at an Asian guy, and you don't first think, oh, American citizen. I know when it comes to brown people in general, you don't first think, oh, Mexican American, Latino. You probably think, deport this guy. I mean, I think that is the fear when we go into this idea of mass deportations kind of willy-nilly without a real plan. I mean, they talk about it, but they don't have a real plan in terms of the details, which is why everything is going to be subject to a legal battle. ACLU just filed suit today saying, hey, how ICE takes these people and puts them on planes, and all those planes, let's see how it's done, because I don't know if we trust those private airlines that are engaged in deportations for ICE. I mean, that's one thing. And there's already been a series of suits that have been filed by the ACLU. There will be more. And then they have immigration lawyers who are waiting to hear more details at every drop of the hat in terms of, this is what's going to happen. We're going to see. What's the definition? Who gets deported? Criminals first? That's what Trump said, but is that what he is going to, go forward with? I mean, it may just be, just get all of them. 11 million. And then, of course, the discussion goes to costs. And we know it costs about almost $11,000 per immigrant. So do the math. $11,000 per immigrant, you're going to deport them all. You voters who voted because of the price of eggs and the price of groceries, etc., the price of gas, is that what you want to spend your money on? So some people are already seeing that this is Trump's bluster at its, nth power, because, it's causing chaos. All he has to do is mention, I'm going to mass deport. Use the military. Use the military. And that's going to be challenged. Although there are things in history that he can use, claiming military necessity, claiming that they're fighting terrorists, but it's still going to take a military challenge to ramp it up to scale. And then there's even a question whether or not you can go to certain areas, especially areas that have designated themselves as sanctuary cities. San Francisco. I mean, they aren't going to cooperate with ICE. I mean, they'll cooperate to the degree that they are supposed to cooperate, but ICE does its job, federal law, enforcing federal law. The locals, they don't have jurisdiction over that. It's not political that they will not help ICE. It's because division of labor. So that's going to be a problem in cities, but may not be a problem out in some rural areas. So we're going to see a real, difference between how, what's targeted, how any kind of mass deportation might happen. More rural than urban. Will they go into the fields? Will they go, where will they go? Likely not to go into white collar type places of employment. But then again, they're going to do what's easiest and what they can get away with. Each time they do something will be challenged legally, as it should. So we're seeing a lot of bluster now. We're seeing a lot of scare tactics. And at the very least, if you voted a certain way, you should be thinking, is this what we wanted for our country? I think for sure you got to ask, is this really what we wanted? I know personally that I have family members who are what they call mixed status, or I know people, certainly, mixed status, meaning legal, illegal, here legally, here not legally, is really the appropriate way to say that. And they're banking on the fact that people won't challenge it, and they're banking on the government, banking on the idea that if there's mixed status families, they'll all deport together, which isn't fair to force that decision on the family when it's totally selective and arbitrary how this is going to come down. You know, if you get picked, you're unlucky. If you get profiled, you're unlucky. If you are stopped because of a busted taillight, you're unlucky. And I know what it's like to be stopped for a busted taillight. No fun, but it's they're not going to do any newfangled approaches to racial profiling. It's probably all going to be the same old tricks, plus the military, if they can get away with it. And if the rule of law is the rule of law, hopefully they won't. Got to stay vigilant. But that's really where we stand on the mass deportation threat. Trump likes to talk it up. If it happens, there will be a legal fight. There will be. I wrote something in Diverse Issues in Higher Education about David Brooks's article. I've been talking about it with Dan Gonzalez, but I took exception with the idea that it's Harvard's fault. Harvard broke America because it was Harvard in its wisdom in the 50s to create what they called a meritocracy based on grades and IQ tests, as if that was it. That's the real be all end all of a human being, how smart they were. Well, yeah, I mean, that was the thinking. How smart you were, combined with how white you are, that was a danger. I mean, we know that there were a lot of people who said, oh, you're dark, low IQ. You're black, low IQ. You're brown like a monkey, low IQ. But there was this emphasis on IQ and testing as the arbiter of who gets ahead, who becomes a leader, who becomes a success in American society. Because those successful people will become the leaders of our country, and oh, isn't this a great country? That was pretty much the premise of David Brooks's piece, and it's all Harvard's fault. And I just said, look, it's not all Harvard's fault, because whatever Harvard did was copied by others. They may have put an overemphasis on IQ and tests in creating what they like to call a meritocracy. But I think we know it was wrong. And I also think we know that Brooks didn't really talk about race as much. He just said, well, he didn't talk about affirmative action. He only says affirmative action was the best tool used to make sure there was a kind of racial equity. But now we don't even have that. He admits that. So I said that's, he hardly talks about race. He just talks about IQ. He brings up this thing about affirmative action, and that's troublesome because the only thing he can say is, well, we got to do better now because we don't have it as a tool. So my criticism was, okay, let's not just blame affirmative action, or let's not just blame Harvard. Let's blame because the bottom line is, and everyone's thinking about this after the 2024 election. They're saying, how could this be? How could there be such a rejection of meritocracy so that we have a Trump? So that, so that people people hate our government and our leaders so much. And I took issue with that. I said, no, they don't hate our politicians or who governs us that much. They hate the inequality that exists economically in our country. And who's to blame for that? Harvard? I don't think so. Who do you blame inequality on? Blame it on the people who suddenly make so much more money, so much more than everyone else. Blame it on the MBAs and their leveraged buyouts in the 70s and 80s. They take mature companies, strip them down, they buy them, strip them down, then sell for a major profit. That was ABCs of wealth, 70s, 80s, 90s. And then 90s and on, it's been technology. Take an analog company, make it digital, make a ton of money. So blame the MBAs, blame high tech. Don't blame Harvard. Don't blame they call it a meritocracy, but or the meritocratic, test scores. But I blame capitalism. Oh, that's easy, Emil. Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, when did CEOs start making so much more money than their average people? Leverage buyouts, tech boom especially, creating more millionaires, more billionaires. So I thought it was a nice thesis. Harvard, Yale people can argue all weekend how the Ivies broke America. Yeah, did you really break America? No. I said I helped break America because when I was accepted to one of those schools, I wasn't convincing enough to Justice John Roberts. And who is Justice John Roberts? He was on the Supreme Court that rejected affirmative action and said, you can't do this anymore. No race-based admissions anymore. Had I been more convincing that an equitable student body, that a student body that had people selected on the basis of race, that was a good thing, that was a valuable thing, maybe it would have changed his mind. Maybe. I don't think so. Just judging from his other decisions, I don't think so. But I thought maybe it could have saved America, because even Brooks says affirmative action is the best tool we have to create a sense of racial equity. Now it's gone. Now it's going to be harder. Yeah, we made it harder. Justice Roberts made it harder. He made it harder to achieve equity because he said yes to racism. He said yes to racial inequality. And he said yes, they're really saying yes to meritocracy. Yes to meritocracy. We're all going to be in it on the merits. And so what do we see now? 2024. We see a society that has elected a president who, on his first go-round, was not qualified to be president, never held office, not even dog catcher. On his second go-round, wasn't qualified to be president. Donald Trump, convicted felon Donald Trump, 34 counts, qualified. Liable for sexual assault, qualified. Unqualified for it, twice impeached. This guy qualified? No. And then he gets elected. And who does he put up for his cabinet? But people who are less qualified than he is. Because he needs control. Matt Gaetz, Attorney General, Tulsi Gabbard, Director of Intelligence, Pete Hegseth at Department of Defense. Managerial skills? No. Look, and these people they're sexy blabbermouths, right? I mean, they want to talk. They don't want to be managers. They don't want to run big bureaucratic agencies. Let the bureaucrats run the bureaucratic agencies. Trump is nominating all these people who are unqualified and would probably make lousy secretaries. They're figureheads. They're like hood ornaments. You think they're going to do the work? They know nothing about the work. And I just saw that Mehmet Oz, Dr. Oz, reality show star, takes one to know one, right? There's Trump nominating a fellow reality star to become the head of Medicare. I mean, Mehmet Oz, I don't know what he's doing now, but he probably doesn't really want to run Medicare. I mean, that's not his, like, oh, that's my top gig. No. His top gig would be replacing Kelly Clarkson or something. Or replacing Judge Judy. Something like that. That's Mehmet Oz's job. He doesn't want to be the head of Medicare. So, but this is what we have. Totally unqualified people picked by an unqualified person in this land we call a meritocracy. Ha, 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 ha. There's no merit. There's no qualifications in any of his picks. Meanwhile, affirmative action, a conservative court last year said, oh, no more affirmative action in America. Can't have an affirmative action. But boy, we can have, and no colorblind. It's not really colorblind. We just have blind loyalty to Trump. That's all. Blind loyalty to Trump. That's all it takes. So, I mean, that's all the scuttlebutt about, Matt Gaetz. Things are getting leaked. He raped a 17-year-old? Oh, but she was a prostitute. Was she engaged in her services? 17. I guess it would be considered what is the term? It would be considered rape, right? Rape of a minor. Statutory rape. 17. Some of the details coming from the testimony is pretty damning for Gaetz. And I just think that this is who Trump wants as the head of the Department of Justice. Attorney General, the top cop. Possibly someone suspected of statutory rape. This is America. This is your country. And, you know, a lot of people say, well, hey, this is the mandate. This is the landslide. No, there's no landslide here. I've said this before. A landslide. Nixon versus McGovern, 1972. That's a landslide. Nixon wins every state except Massachusetts. That's a landslide. Landslide. Donald Trump should know landslides. He's a real estate guy. He didn't win by a landslide. He didn't have a mandate. It was about 1 to 3 million votes difference, which is really 3% at most different. I think right now, Trump only has less than 50% of the vote, the popular vote. He still won the Electoral College. And I guess he could still win the popular vote, but he's not winning it running away. Not if he only has less than 50% of the vote. Well, Kamala Harris didn't have 50%. I mean, there was some third-party candidates, other people got votes. But as of this morning, the headline was Donald Trump has like 49.9% of the vote, popular vote. Not a mandate. And then one thing I want to close with, Nancy Mace, she's an enigma. She wants to play both sides. I guess that's the mark of a politician. Nancy Mace is Republican, MAGA, but oh man, is she kind to animals? Very kind to animals. I mean, that's kind of the soft spot. Kind to animals, mean to blacks, people of color, but kind to animals. That's kind of the default for some conservatives. But Nancy Mace sponsored a bill today about the bathrooms in the Capitol, and it was so anti-trans that it just, how can you be so pro-animal and then anti-trans? It just doesn't make sense. She also misgendered there's a new trans woman who was elected to Congress from Rhode Island. She misgendered her, called her a him. I'm telling you, it's such a small number of people, trans people, but the Republicans continue to use them as a wedge to just separate, to create this moral divide. Oh, these trans people, trans women in sports, no good. Trans women are women. They belong in women's sports. But there's going to be no let up. That's the bottom line from seeing the actions of Nancy Mace today. Trans people are the new minority scapegoat, I guess you can call them. They're the root of all evil. And the Republicans, they are not letting up on this transphobic, discriminatory line of thinking. It's not going away. All right. I guess that's it. I wanted to keep this short today. Thank you for joining me. If you missed the Marsh show yesterday, I'm going to put it on my Patreon. And if you join the Patreon, that's sort of the place to gather. That's kind of the place where I'm going to start doing the live things there. As I got to figure it out on the software. But as opposed to doing it on YouTube, I'll probably just do like a little teaser show on YouTube, and then go do the live stream on Patreon, and then you're just going to have to join it. I mean, the one thing I like about Patreon is that there's the algorithm is, it's sort of algorithm free. Just show up. Censorship free. Just show up. So Patreon, patreon.com/Emil Amok. And then that's where you can talk to me. That's where you can, say, hey, hi, Emil. Hey, you were wrong there when you said this about that. Okay, I'm not perfect, but that's where we're going to go do that. So check that out, Patreon. And if you join, I'll put my grandma's story. And actually, it's about my family. And it's about the election. I'll put that on. It's just 20 minutes, but could be interesting. But you got to join the different levels of Patreon, or pick the level that has everything, and join. In the meantime, I think this will be one of the last weeks we're going to do stuff on just YouTube. Just preferring the Patreon site. And also, we like the Substack site for the columns. So go to the Substack for columns I do there. Substack.com/@Emil Amok. All right, that's it. I'll do more laughter yoga another time on Patreon. Oh, yeah, that's it. Laughter yoga on Patreon. Do a regular laughter. I just got to figure out the software. And then that's it. Tomorrow, Wednesday, I might be. Where might I be? Somewhere doing comedy somewhere. Check us out on the live stream. I might be at the Deaf Puppy. The Deaf Puppy, yeah. Might be. I remember driving back home last night, listening to the Warriors play. Oh man, the Warriors, terrible. Oh, and let me say, I apologize for saying Logan Paul instead of Jake Paul. The Pauls are not created equal. They are brothers, but Jake Paul went up against Mike Tyson, and it was Jake Paul who won. And man, why did I think that Tyson had a shot? He's going against a younger guy, a bigger guy, who has more energy. And I hope he didn't bet that. I hope he didn't. No, you didn't bet that. You just sort of watched it on Netflix, right? No, it's incredible that all the people who saw it, and Netflix is still in trouble, apparently. Still in trouble in terms of this. All the streaming services are running out of money. You know why? It's because they keep thinking that, it just keeps getting better and better for us. We just keep getting more and more money. No, at some point, enough's enough, right? Anyway. All right. Back again tomorrow. I like to close with a little meditation. This is from a guy who got kicked out of meditation school. Yeah, I look deep into the soul of my fellow meditators. They said, no, I think that feels like a Me Too charge. Anyway, as I wish for me, I wish for you. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be healthy. And may you live with ease. Emil Guillermo here. Till next time. Mahal Kita. Rest in peace, Grandma.